Call girls, what requests from your clients made you feel pity? This happened many years ago. He paid for 90 minutes, 60 of which were spent talking about his ex-wife, who hated him. Then he read me poems he had written about his ex. We never met again, but later he sent me a few of his poems by email. One time, a married client came to see me. All he wanted was for me to wear a wig the same color as his wife's hair, put on lipstick in a specific shade. He brought the exact same lipstick his wife used and spray perfume, the same perfume his wife used. He brought it with him. Then he started telling me about his day, and I had to listen and praise him. He came regularly until he divorced and married someone else. I hope what you were doing helped him raise his self-esteem and make the decision to divorce and remarry a much more attentive wife. It's interesting that role-playing sometimes helps us figure everything out and make the right decisions. One client paid me $250 a week just to talk to him, no intimacy. His wife had passed away, and he was very lonely. He just needed communication with a woman. One time, when we were hanging out as usual, he couldn't hold it in and cried because he missed his wife. I hugged him and let him cry. It's not the saddest request, but the most recent one I remember. Another guy paid me $300 every 2 weeks just to exchange texts with him and be sweet with him. No physical contact, no naked photos, no exchange of inappropriate texts. I was just supposed to wish him good morning or good night, ask about his work and hobbies, and write approving phrases. In my youth, I worked as a male stripper. A woman in her 40s often came to our shows. One time, she suggested we go to dinner, and I agreed because she was quite attractive. When we met, it took less than 5 minutes before she burst into tears. I asked her what happened, and she told me that I was the exact replica of her son, who had died from cancer. She showed me several photos of him, and the resemblance was striking. We stayed in touch, but in 2018, she passed away from cancer as well. Rest in peace. I can't recall anything like that, but I had several clients with severe disabilities, such as being paralyzed or those who could only breathe with assistance. I always felt sad when I met such gentlemen and pitied them because they all needed touch to experience pleasure. They still had desires and needs, but they were bedridden and couldn't do anything on their own, fearing that their relatives would be against them hiring call girls. My very first client asked me to spit in his mouth and say I love him. Later, he confessed that his father had cancer. He pulled out a photo album, and we looked at pictures of his father when he was young. I did this over the phone with a client, and after a few sessions with him, I realized that he was paying only for conversation. He probably didn't have enough money for many sessions. During the 5th call, he acted very strangely. He complained that I was rarely online and wanted to talk with me all day, but when it became clear he didn't have money, he started asking me to lower the price. I told him it wasn't worth spending so much time on phone intimacy because it could harm his mind, and that he should see a psychotherapist. I once had PTSD, but thanks to my therapist, I was able to overcome it and change my life. When I told him this, he was upset and blocked me. 2 days later, I was woken up by a message from him. He begged me to take him back and sent me a photo of his credit card, both sides, to prove his ability to pay. I felt so sorry for him. This story didn't happen to me, but was shared by an acquaintance who once worked in this field. She had a regular client who came every week. All he wanted was conversation, touch, and innocent things. He never asked for anything intimate. My acquaintance said that this was not so rare because some men feel guilty for visiting brothels, while others simply fulfill an unusual fetish. But this guy was very different from the others. She concluded that he was very unhappy in his family life. It could be assumed that he had no other sources of joy except for an hour of communication with her. One time, he scheduled another meeting with her, but I never heard from him again. I am a webcam operator, and sometimes users on Pornhub ask me to record videos of certain content. One guy asked me to make a video with a girl just saying, "Hi John, I love you, John, I miss you, John," etc. Apparently, no one had ever told him such words in real life. I worked as a webcam dominatrix with a guy who liked being humiliated. He didn't believe I was like this in real life, not just on camera. In real relationships, I prefer to avoid humiliation, but I played along because he never asked for anything too extreme. Besides, I even liked doing this with him. I always insisted on having a deep conversation with him after our sessions because I thought not doing so would be without feeling. The first time, he talked to me for half an hour about the pressure he was constantly under and how much relief our communication gave him. He was from the Midwest, from a very strict family, where the belief was that all men should be strong and masculine. As a result, he was on the brink of a breakdown. He needed someone with whom he could feel weak and escape from real life. I've heard many similar stories from clients, mostly from newbies. I often get newbies because I'm not as harsh as some others, but he was different. He was well versed in psychology, erudite, and sensitive. I felt very sorry for such a delicate, soft, and insightful person who had to suppress his best qualities all his life. He had a very healthy and meaningful view of his fetish and the complexes it created in him. I always wished and continue to wish him personal happiness. I hope that now the circumstances of his life are not so oppressive and that he has achieved the right to express his feelings and weaknesses to others. I often think about him, about once a week. I wonder how he's doing, if he found a girl who can give him what he needs. I don't know if it's considered, but I once sold pictures of my feet. One of my clients was a very pleasant person. He was very young, just a few years older than me. I was 20 years old, and he was very self-conscious about his fetish. He always paid me well and was even overly polite, even paying for my pedicure. But he never demanded anything excessive, which is very rare. We corresponded for a long time, and I tried to convince him that there's nothing horrible about a foot fetish, that he shouldn't be ashamed of it, but he never managed to overcome his guilt. He grew up in a very conservative family and was used to suppressing his secret desires. He was one of the most pleasant clients and guys I've met, constantly showering me with compliments. Our working relationship felt more like a friendship. I know many call girls, and many of them, during conversations, mention clients who behaved differently than others. I heard many different stories on this topic, but the one that stuck with me most was about a young Australian who met a call girl and brought her to his house. He went to the shower, and when she followed him in, she saw that his hose looked terrible. It was all swollen. He didn't want intimacy but asked her to insert a pencil into his sausage. She refused to even touch him, and he cried. Another story that stuck with me was about a middle-aged European who brought girls to his room and called his wife and kids in the middle of it. He called them at the most inappropriate moments, explaining that he couldn't calm down until he heard their voices. Nothing worked for him until he convinced himself that he was a caring father and husband. By the way, several acquaintances told me about him because he frequently rented girls. I was with a 23-year-old guy who was 3 years younger than me. He loved to imagine that he was doing this for the last time before his death. He wanted me to pretend that I loved him, that I was his other half. Throughout his life, he never met a woman who could make him feel loved and unique. This happened relatively recently. My friend and I decided to call 2 escort girls, rented a room with 2 big beds in a hotel. Soon, they arrived 2 young, beautiful blondes, both slightly over 20. The girl my friend got was very similar to his ex-wife, who had cheated on him while we were both on a military mission abroad. He loved her very much, and apparently, due to alcohol, he hugged her tightly and cried. I felt very sorry for him. He said he loved her very much, asked why she did this to him, and continued holding her while crying and kissing her on the forehead. Soon, he fell asleep, and I apologized to the girl, explaining what had happened. She said everything was fine, that she would stay next to him while he slept, and that we wouldn't have to pay for the whole night, only for 2 hours as we originally agreed. In the morning, my friend gave her a generous tip and told her to take care of herself. I won't lie, before I didn't have a good opinion of call girls, but thanks to her, I began to view them differently. For a while, I worked as a dominatrix in an underground establishment in New York. One time, an older man wanted to talk to me before the session to make sure I suited him. He asked if I had ever worked in dentistry because he wanted me to pull a couple of his teeth. He explained that his insurance wouldn't cover the full cost of the procedure, but if I pulled out the worst ones, it would fit his budget. I politely refused, and we didn't do the session. Later, I found out that he was quite well known in such places because many of my colleagues had been asked to provide this service. I'm still not sure whether he really needed his teeth pulled or if it was just some peculiar fetish. I really hope he gave up on that idea because having your teeth pulled by a dominatrix isn't the best idea. I only work online, and sometimes I feel sad about how often clients ask me to humiliate them. One guy wanted me to call him a slave, make him put his head in the toilet, defecate on him, and flush. He offered a lot of money for this, but I wasn't ready to agree to that. One of my clients was very wealthy. Our first meeting was quite nice, then we exchanged texts and memes about the topics we discussed during the meeting. For 2 months, he rented me once a week for the whole night, paying €2,000 per meeting. He also bought me various gifts and books that he thought I would like. After 6 meetings, he gave me a ring and confessed his love. I felt very uncomfortable and told him I liked meeting him, but there could be nothing serious between us because it was just business for both of us. He cried and said I was acting just like his former fiancée, who had died. He said he just wanted us to be happy together. When I told him that I couldn't replace his former fiancée, he cried again and asked me to pretend to be her, at least for one night. I refused, went home, and blocked his number. Be sure to subscribe to our channel to not miss new and exciting discussions. Meanwhile, we suggest you check out our other videos.